The hospital room smelled of antiseptic and fading lilies. Machines hummed softly, their rhythmic beeping a cruel reminder that time was running out. Linda Parker lay frail against the stark white sheets, her chest rising and falling with visible effort. Her 3 children, Michael, Sarah, and Daniel, stood around her bed, each wearing their grief differently. Michael, the eldest, clenched his jaw, his eyes fixed on the floor as if holding himself together by sheer will. Sarah's hands trembled as she smoothed the blanket over her mother's legs, her face streaked with silent tears. Daniel lingered near the doorway, arms crossed, his expression unreadable, caught between anger and fear. "Mom," Sarah whispered, her voice breaking, "you don't have to talk. Just rest." But Linda's eyes, cloudy yet burning with urgency, snapped open. She clutched Sarah's hand with surprising strength. "No, I can't rest. Not yet. There are things you don't know. Things you must hear before I go." Michael shook his head sharply. "Mom, don't do this now. You need your strength." A bitter smile tugged at Linda's lips. "Strength? That's the one thing I've been running out of my entire life." She coughed violently, and Sarah leaned in to support her, fear etched across her face. "Years ago," Linda began, her voice hoarse, "before any of you were born, I was homeless, alone, pregnant." Michael's head shot up, his brows furrowing. Daniel straightened from the wall, arms dropping to his sides. "What are you talking about?" Michael demanded, his voice sharp. "I had no family, no money, nothing but shame and a child I couldn't feed." Linda's eyes filled with tears. "I gave him away, a baby boy. It was the only way I could survive." The room erupted. "You what?" Daniel's voice cracked with disbelief, anger swelling beneath his words. Sarah's grip tightened on Linda's hand. "Oh my God, Mom!" Michael took a step back, his face pale. "All these years, everything you taught us about honesty, about family, and you were hiding this?" His voice thundered through the sterile room. Linda reached out, desperate. "I did it for you, for the life you all have now. But I never stopped searching, never stopped wondering where he was." The siblings exchanged looks, confusion, betrayal, grief, each one processing the confession like shards of broken glass cutting through their hearts. And then, silence, heavy, oppressive. From the corner of the room, a low sound stirred, the scrape of a chair being pushed back. All 3 siblings turned. The hospice nurse, Matthew, stood in the shadows, his gaze fixed on Linda. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes burned with something deeper than pity, unspoken recognition. As Linda's breath rattled in her chest, Matthew's lips parted as though he might speak, yet he stayed silent. The room was thick with the weight of Linda's confession. Her children stood in stunned silence, their grief momentarily eclipsed by shock. The machines around the bed beeped steadily, a cruel metronome counting down the last beats of her life. But Sarah's attention shifted away from her mother. She caught it, a flicker across Matthew's face. The hospice nurse's calm facade had cracked, if only for a heartbeat. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched at his sides. It was not the expression of a stranger touched by tragedy. It was personal. "Matthew." Sarah's voice wavered as her tear-stained eyes locked onto his. "Why are you looking at her like that?" He froze. The air seemed to evaporate from the room. Michael's gaze darted toward the nurse, sharp and accusing. "Yeah, what the hell is this? Why do you look like you already knew?" Matthew inhaled slowly, his composure unraveling. He glanced at Linda, then back to the 3 siblings who glared at him with growing suspicion. His voice, when it finally came, was cold, steady, and devastating. "I know exactly who Linda Parker is," he said, his words slicing through the silence like a blade. His eyes glistened with restrained fury. "She's my mother!" The room exploded. Michael's hands curled into fists. "That's impossible! This has to be some kind of sick joke." Daniel stepped forward, his voice laced with venom. "So what? You've been here this whole time, playing nurse? Watching us? Watching her? Sarah staggered back, shaking her head in disbelief. No, this can't be real. She turned desperately to Linda, but their mother's eyes had fluttered shut, her body trembling with exhaustion. Matthew's gaze never left the siblings. I didn't come here to hurt anyone. I came here because I needed to see her with my own eyes, to hear her admit what she did. His voice cracked on the last words, years of buried pain surfacing. Michael's voice was raw with rage. Prove it! Daniel's glare sharpened. Yeah, you want us to believe you're our brother? Show us something. Anything. Without hesitation, Matthew reached into the folder he carried for his shift. From within, he pulled a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges from being handled too many times. He tossed it onto the bed table, the sound sharp in the tense room. Sarah leaned forward with trembling hands and unfolded it. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes skimmed the words. It was a birth certificate, the mother's name, Linda Parker. Michael's face drained of color. Daniel muttered a curse under his breath. Sarah's tears spilled faster now, blurring the words but not their meaning. The truth could no longer be denied. The birth certificate still lay on the bed table, its creases catching the dim hospital light. None of the Parker siblings could look at it any longer, yet none could look away. The truth was undeniable. Michael's face was rigid, every muscle tense. His voice finally cut through the silence, low and trembling with rage. She lied to us. Our whole lives, she lied. About family, about loyalty, about everything. Sarah turned on him, eyes blazing through her tears. Don't you dare! Don't you dare act like you understand what she went through. She was homeless, Michael. Alone. She did what she had to do to survive. Michael barked a bitter laugh. Oh, and that makes it okay? That makes it fine that she kept this secret? We've been living a lie, Sarah. A lie! Daniel, who had been pacing like a caged animal, suddenly snapped. You're not angry because of the lie. You're angry because, for once, you're not the center of everything. All your life, you've been the perfect son, the golden boy. Now you're just one of 4. Doesn't feel so good, does it? Michael spun on him, his fury redirected. Don't start with me, Daniel. You wouldn't know responsibility if it slapped you in the face. You've coasted your entire life. No job, lass. No relationship sticks. You're pathetic. Daniel's eyes narrowed, a dangerous spark igniting. Careful, brother. You think you're better than me, but you're nothing without control. And right now, you've lost it. Sarah stepped between them, her voice breaking. Stop it, both of you. This isn't about you, it's about Mom, about Matthew, about everything we never knew. She glanced at Matthew, who stood silently, a storm brewing in his eyes, as if torn between triumph and sorrow. But the words only deepened the cracks. Michael glared at Sarah now. Of course you'd defend him. You've always been soft, always desperate to believe the best in people. But guess what? Sometimes people don't deserve forgiveness. Sarah's lip trembled, her voice rising. And sometimes people don't deserve to judge. Not everything is black and white, Michael. Not everyone gets to be perfect like you pretend to be. The room vibrated with fury, grief, and raw betrayal. The siblings, bound by blood, now divided by secrets, stood on the edge of collapse. Unable to bear it any longer, Michael shoved past Sarah, his voice rough with venom. I can't stay here. I need to get out before I say something I can't take back. The door slammed behind him, leaving Sarah and Daniel breathless in the wake of his fury. And outside in the hallway, Michael stumbled straight into a figure from his past. A woman with striking eyes, lips curled into a knowing smile. Hello, Michael, she purred. Miss me? It was Vanessa, his ex-lover, and in her eyes burned the promise of secrets yet to be revealed. The night pressed heavy on the Parker household. After Linda's confession and Matthew's revelation, the air had become thick with unspoken accusations. Michael hadn't returned since storming off with Vanessa, and Daniel had buried himself in bitter silence, leaving Sarah alone with her thoughts. She found herself wandering into the quiet family living room, the one place that still smelled faintly of her mother's lavender candles. To her surprise, Matthew was already there, sitting stiffly in the armchair. A medical file lay closed on the coffee table, but his eyes weren't on it. They were distant, unfocused, drowning in grief. "You shouldn't be here," Sarah said softly, though her tone lacked conviction. Matthew glanced up, his voice rough. "I shouldn't be anywhere. I don't belong in this family. Not to her, not to any of you." Sarah stepped closer, torn between anger and compassion. "That's not true. She thought about you every day. She said she never stopped searching." He gave a short, humorless laugh. "And yet, she raised 3 perfect children while I lived in foster homes, bounced from one stranger to another. Tell me, Sarah, what exactly did she save me from?" The bitterness in his voice cut deep. Sarah moved closer, lowering herself onto the couch opposite him. "You don't understand, you weren't here. Mom wasn't perfect, but everything she did, every sacrifice, was for survival. She hated herself for giving you up." His eyes met hers, dark and wounded. "Do you hate her for lying to you?" Sarah hesitated, her throat tightening. "I don't know. All I know is, I don't hate you." The silence that followed was electric, charged with something neither of them dared name. Sarah's hand hovered over the armrest, aching to reach for his. Matthew's gaze flicked down to her trembling fingers, then back up to her tear-streaked face. "You shouldn't look at me that way," he whispered. "And you shouldn't make me feel this way," she shot back, her voice trembling with both defiance and desire. They were inches apart now, the grief binding them, the forbidden pull drawing them closer. Sarah's breath caught as Matthew leaned forward, his face just a breath away from hers. Her heart pounded, guilt and longing colliding violently inside her chest. "Sarah," Matthew murmured, his lips so close she could taste the warmth of his breath. Just then, a sharp voice sliced through the tension. "Well, isn't this sweet?" Sarah jerked back, her head snapping toward the doorway. Michael stood there, his eyes narrowed, rage burning hot and wild. The living room crackled with hostility. Michael's voice had thundered like a storm, shattering the fragile silence between Sarah and Matthew. Sarah's cheeks still burned with shame, while Matthew's jaw was tight, his eyes refusing to waver. "You're unbelievable," Michael spat, pacing like a predator. "Our mother hasn't even been buried, and you're in here cozying up to him? To him?" He jabbed a finger toward Matthew, his rage spilling unchecked. Sarah's voice trembled, but she forced herself to stand tall. "Don't twist this, Michael. You don't understand." "I understand enough," he snapped, cutting her off. "He's not one of us. He never will be. He's a mistake Mom tried to erase, and you're just too naive to see it." Matthew flinched, his face hardening at the word mistake. But before he could speak, Daniel's voice rang out from the doorway, low and dangerous. "You're wrong." All eyes turned to Daniel, who leaned against the frame with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. He stepped inside, each stride deliberate, his words sharp. "Matthew's not some stranger. He's blood, our blood, and you'd know that if you weren't too busy playing the perfect son." Michael squared his shoulders, glaring at his younger brother. "And you'd defend him just to spite me, wouldn't you?" Daniel's smirk widened. "Not just to spite you, to finally break the illusion that you're in control of everything. Face it, Michael, you've been replaced." The siblings' voices rose, clashing like blades, until a slow, deliberate clap echoed from the shadows. Everyone froze. From the far side of the room, Richard Parker stepped forward, his presence commanding, his suit perfectly pressed, as though he had just returned from a boardroom rather than his dying wife's bedside. His smile was thin, cruel, and knowing. "Well," Richard drawled, his voice dripping with condescension, "it seems the little secret's finally out." Sarah's breath hitched. "Dad, you knew." Richard's eyes glittered as he looked from one child to the next. "Of course I knew. I knew about Matthew. I knew about your mother's past, and I chose silence, because unlike her, I understand the value of reputation." Michael's fists trembled at his sides. "You let us believe she was perfect, all while you sat on the truth? You've manipulated us for years." Richard's smile didn't falter. "I did what needed to be done. This family has always been about power, about appearances. Sacrifices had to be made. Your mother was too weak to tell you herself, so I kept her secret." Matthew's eyes burned with fury. You let me rot in foster care while you lived like a king. Richard tilted his head, unbothered. You were an inconvenience, nothing more. The words cut like glass. Sarah's tears spilled over, her voice trembling. How could you? How could you be so cruel? Richard's smirk widened as he poured himself a drink from the sideboard, unhurried, savoring the chaos he'd unleashed. He lifted his glass in a mock toast. So, he said, swirling the liquor, you finally found out. The lawyers had arrived before the sun even touched the Parker estate. The grand living room, usually a place of family gatherings and laughter, had transformed into a battlefield. Plush furniture and ornate chandeliers did little to soften the tension radiating from the room. Michael stood rigid, hands clenched at his sides, his jaw tight with barely restrained anger. Sarah hovered near Matthew, who stood stoically, his expression a mask of controlled fury. Daniel lounged against a marble column, an amused smirk tugging at his lips, fully aware he was stirring the pot. The lawyer, a sleek woman named Allison Crane, cleared her throat and adjusted her glasses. We are gathered today to execute the will of the late Linda Parker, she began, her voice professional, but the weight of anticipation made it tremble slightly. The will designates her estate, including liquid assets, property, and investments, to my children. Matthew's eyes flicked to the words, dark and unreadable. Excuse me, he said slowly, I am her child. She gave me life before she gave it to any of you. Daniel's smirk widened. That's going to be interesting to argue. He shot Michael a glance. Doesn't this ruin your perfect little world? Michael's hands clenched tighter, and he turned to the lawyer. We all know she loved him, but are we really expected to share this fortune with him? His voice was sharp, defensive, and bitter. Allison gave a polite nod. Legally, Mr. Parker? Yes. If Mr. Matthew provides proof, he has equal claim as the other 3 children. She paused dramatically. Linda Parker's intention was clear. She wanted all of her children to be acknowledged and cared for, but she left room for interpretation. Sarah's voice trembled, cutting through the growing tension. This isn't about money, not really. Mom loved all of us, Matthew included. Can't we just… Daniel laughed, sharp and cruel. Oh, Sarah, don't be naive. Love doesn't pay bills. Love doesn't buy houses or stocks. This is war, and the first casualty is sentimentality. Matthew's eyes burned as he reached into his jacket. From the inner pocket, he pulled a folded envelope. He placed it on the table. This proves who I am. Birth certificate, adoption records, and my mother's notes detailing her search for me. Michael leaned over, his anger barely contained. She never mentioned this to us. You think just showing a piece of paper erases the years of lies? Allison interjected sharply. Gentlemen, the legal facts are clear. Unless contested formally, Matthew is entitled to a share. Daniel's grin turned vicious. Oh, we'll contest it. And I'll make sure everyone knows exactly what it means to share with him. A sudden silence fell. Every sibling understood the truth. This inheritance wasn't just money. It was power, leverage, and a test of loyalty. And now, Matthew's presence had thrown everything into chaos. The Parker estate had never felt colder. The tension from the inheritance meeting still hung in the air like fog, thick and suffocating. Michael retreated to the library, attempting to escape the suffocating stares and judgmental whispers of his family. But as he sank into the leather armchair, the door creaked open, and there she was, Vanessa, his ex-lover. Her eyes glinted with that same dangerous spark that had captivated him years ago. The very memory of her still made his chest tighten, his pulse race, and now she stood in his sanctuary like a shadow from the past. Miss me? She purred, leaning against the doorway with one perfectly manicured hand resting on the frame. Michael's jaw clenched. Vanessa, what are you doing here? This isn't the time. Oh, Michael, she interrupted, a sly smile tugging at her lips. There's never a right time when it comes to your family, but I think you'll want to hear what I have to say. His brows knit together in suspicion. What could you possibly know? Vanessa's eyes danced, the hint of a secret shimmering behind them. Oh, just little things. Things about your father, about your mother, about who you really are. Michael's heart stuttered. What are you talking about? Vanessa pushed the door wider, stepping inside like she owned the space. Years ago, before you were born, I had an affair." Her voice was almost a whisper, heavy with implication. "With your father." Michael felt as if the floor had dropped beneath him. "You're lying." "I never lie, Michael. Not when the truth is this deliciously explosive." She sauntered closer, her presence magnetic and dangerous. "Do you really think you're Richard Parker's son? Or could you be someone else entirely?" Michael staggered back, his chest tight with panic. "This isn't possible. How? Why would you?" "Because secrets," Vanessa said smoothly, "have a way of coming out, especially in families like yours." She tilted her head, letting the words hang in the air, like a guillotine poised to drop. At that moment, Daniel entered the library, smirking. Vanessa, how nice of you to join the party. And here I thought my family drama couldn't get any juicier." Vanessa's eyes flicked to him. "Daniel, always enjoying chaos, aren't you?" Sarah's voice echoed from the hallway. "Michael, come away from her." But her warning went unheeded. Michael was frozen, his world tilting, shaken to its core by the possibility that everything he believed about his identity, about his family, might be a lie. Vanessa leaned closer, her lips brushing his ear. "Tomorrow, we'll see just how true my little revelations are. But tonight, think about what it could mean if I'm right." The Parker estate was quiet in a way that felt suffocating, as though the walls themselves were holding their breath. After Michael's confrontation with Vanessa, the tension among the remaining siblings had reached a fever pitch. Sarah wandered through the house, her thoughts a chaotic storm of guilt, grief, and longing. She found herself in the dimly lit study, where Matthew sat alone, a stack of medical charts abandoned at his side. His eyes, dark and troubled, followed her every movement. "Sarah!" His voice was low, hesitant, and tinged with something more than grief. She stopped a few feet away, swallowing hard. I didn't mean to upset Michael." Matthew shook his head. "It's not just Michael. It's this. Everything. Mom's confession, the inheritance, the lies. I feel like the world's been turned upside down." Sarah took a tentative step closer. "I know. I feel the same way. But you make sense in all this chaos." Her voice faltered. "You're the one person who understands what Mom gave up, what she lost." Matthew's gaze softened, and he rose from the chair. He closed the distance between them, and for a moment, the chaos of the Parker family seemed to disappear. The room pulsed, with a tension neither of them could deny. "Sarah," he murmured, his hand brushing a stray strand of hair from her face. Her breath hitched. "Matthew." Their faces inched closer, heartbeats synchronizing, drawn together by grief, longing, and an unspoken, forbidden desire. The world outside, the inheritance battles, Michael's anger, Daniel's smirks, faded into nothingness. Matthew's lips hovered near hers, a whisper of temptation. "I shouldn't." "And I shouldn't," Sarah whispered back, yet her body betrayed her words, leaning forward, aching for connection. For one brief, electric moment, they were about to cross a line that could never be uncrossed. The air was thick with longing and guilt, the room charged with forbidden emotion. And then, "Stop right there." The voice cut through the tension like a knife. Both of them froze. Michael stood in the doorway, eyes wide, jaw tight, rage radiating from his every movement. He had returned, unannounced, and had caught them in that precarious, intimate moment. "Are you serious?" he hissed, advancing into the room. "Sarah? With him?" His gaze flicked between them, disbelief and fury battling on his face. Matthew stepped back, his own expression unreadable but tense. Sarah's face burned crimson, her hands trembling. Michael's voice was barely controlled. "I can't believe this. You've crossed the line. Do you even understand what this means?" Sarah's lips parted, guilt and fear choking her words. "Michael, it's not." "Not what?" he snapped. "It's exactly what it looks like." The Parker estate had become a house of tension and whispers. The storm of secrets, betrayals, and forbidden attractions had reached a fever pitch, leaving every corner thick with unspoken accusations. But no one anticipated the next disaster. Richard Parker sat in the grand study, his face pale beneath the harsh light of the chandelier. His hand trembled as he held the glass of scotch, and the air around him felt heavy, as though the room itself sensed the impending catastrophe. I don't feel well," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. Michael, still seething from the confrontation over Sarah and Matthew, glared at him. "What is it now, Dad? Another secret you've been hoarding?" Richard's lips pressed into a thin line, but before he could respond, his body shuddered violently. The glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the hardwood floor. "Dad!" Sarah screamed, rushing to his side. Matthew moved instinctively, supporting him as he collapsed into the nearest chair. Daniel, always alert to opportunities in chaos, stepped forward, his expression unreadable. Paramedics arrived minutes later, but inside the house, the real storm had only begun. Richard, pale and shaking, took a deep breath, struggling to speak. There's something you all need to know, something about Matthew." Matthew's eyes narrowed. "What is it?" Richard's hand shook as he gestured toward the children. "Matthew isn't your mother's only hidden child," Sarah gasped, clutching Matthew's arm. Michael froze mid-step, his face drained of color. What are you saying?" Daniel's voice was sharp, but disbelief lingered underneath. Richard coughed violently, his voice weakening. "Years ago, she gave away twins. There's another one, somewhere." A stunned silence fell over the room. The Parker siblings stared at each other, disbelief and fear etched into their faces. Suddenly, the door creaked open, and a stranger stepped inside. The air seemed to freeze as all eyes turned. The figure was young, tall, and cautious, eyes scanning the room with uncertainty. I think I'm the other one," the stranger said softly, voice trembling. "My name is Luke." Matthew's body stiffened. "Luke?" His voice was barely audible, a mix of shock, curiosity, and apprehension. Daniel's smirk vanished, replaced by a hard glare. "Another one? Another heir? This just keeps getting better." Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief. Michael stumbled backward, almost as if the ground had given way beneath him. Richard slumped in his chair, exhausted, the weight of decades of secrets finally breaking him. "Linda, she left so much hidden, so many truths." The Parker estate was in chaos. The arrival of Luke, the hidden twin, had thrown the family into a storm of emotions. Matthew's jaw was tight, his mind racing. Sarah clung to him, her own feelings of guilt and longing clashing with the whirlwind of new revelations. Michael paced, muttering under his breath, while Daniel lounged against the wall, a predatory smirk dancing on his lips. "Another one? Another Parker heir?" Michael finally shouted, his voice cracking with disbelief. "How many of Mom's secrets are there?" Sarah shook her head, her voice trembling. "Michael, we can't. This isn't about fighting. Mom wanted us together, even if she didn't know how to show it." Matthew's gaze was fixed on Luke, who stood awkwardly in the doorway, scanning each sibling nervously. "I've been looking for her, for my mother, for answers," Luke said softly, "and I think I've finally found you all." Daniel laughed, sharp and cutting. "Answers? You think this will make anything easier? You're stepping into a war, Luke. And trust me, you're not ready for what comes next." Richard slumped in his chair, weakened from his collapse, but his eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "Your mother, Linda Parker, she left more than just money behind. She left secrets that could destroy or bind you all." Sarah clutched Matthew's arm, fear and anticipation warring in her chest. "Matthew, what do we do? How do we fix this?" Matthew shook his head, a shadow of doubt in his eyes. "Fix it? Some things can't be fixed. We can only survive it. And maybe, just maybe, learn who we really are along the way." Daniel's grin widened, sensing leverage. "Survive? Oh, this family doesn't survive. It thrives on chaos." Just then, a small, yellowed envelope slid across the table toward Matthew. His hands trembled as he picked it up. The handwriting was unmistakable. "Linda Parker. Mom, she left this for me," he whispered, unfolding it carefully. The room fell silent, every eye on the trembling paper in his hands. Sarah leaned closer. "What does it say?" Matthew's eyes widened in shock as he read aloud. "The truth about your father, The man who fathered my first child. He is not who you think. Protect the child. Protect each other. Forgive, but never forget. Michael staggered back. What? What does this mean? Daniel's eyes narrowed, calculating. It means the final piece of the puzzle, the one that could ruin everything, is still hidden. Luke stepped forward, uncertain but resolute. Who is he? Mom's first child's father? Matthew swallowed hard, his knuckles white as he gripped the envelope. I don't know yet, but I intend to find out.